Hello, everybody. This is Loose Canons again with podcast number 6. Today we're going to be discussing 1939's Only Angels Have Wings, a movie about a group of pilots who are delivering mail, trying to get contract, doing all sorts of risky maneuvers, I think to help get someone out of debt as well as make money for themselves. So Reuben, Patrick, and Basil here for your entertainment.
Hey, what's up?
Does anyone want to start off with what they thought of the movie?
Not at all.
I'll go first.
No one does.
Let Basil go first.
No,
Basil,
we don't
I don't think Basil ever gets to go first in this.
Yeah, me first. I would say, considering I've been meaning to watch this movie for probably like 4 years, and I'm a really big fan of Howard Hawks, I was maybe a little bit let down as far as how much I enjoyed it. I liked it okay, decent amount, but compared to other of his movies, I think I've seen probably 8 of his movies, and this would be near the bottom. Not at the actual bottom. I think that will always be I Was a Male War Bride, because that movie is terrible. But
it's a terrible title too.
Yeah, I guess Jean Arthur's character is supposed to be sort of like the intro character, so that the audience, like, kind of the cipher for the audience. But I felt like a lot of her storyline was kind of shoehorned in there, and that the movie was much more interesting when it just focused on the flying and the kind of camaraderie between the other male characters, and kind of lost me with the romance subplot.
Yeah, the romance didn't feel very necessary, honestly. It was just kind of like, oh, that's there. Like on all fronts, really. I mean, the most compelling story was kind of between the kid and McPherson, who, McPherson, like, jumped out of the plane and left the kid's brother to die in a crash or whatever, and I thought that was really the most, like, dramatic story in the whole thing.
Do you want to say generally what you thought of it, Patrick?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I liked it all right. There were never any parts where I was like, oh, wow, that was amazing. It was mostly just like, oh, that's kind of cool the way they set all of that up, and I generally enjoy watching Cary Grant, delivering quippy dialogue, but in this one, it didn't seem like there was a normal level of, like, Howard Hawks crackle to the dialogue. It seemed fairly pedestrian in most respects. So I could probably, I don't know, if I had to rate it on a star scale, I'd probably give it like a 2.5 stars, because I liked it all right, and I don't think I would have any problem watching it again. But it certainly didn't stand out in my mind as being exceptional.
All right, so we are actually, I think, all in agreement in that none of us hated it and none of us particularly liked it.
Just middle of the road.
Yeah, I think that a little bit of it is kind of wonky, like, as far as plot structuring goes. For some reason, it seemed like there were, like, big dramatic plot points that were supposed to come up that, I don't know, it felt like the big climactic point in the movie isn't shared by the characters who should be sharing it. It's these kind of side characters who share the big dramatic end scene instead of the kind of main characters that the movie is setting up. Like, at one point I felt like it was setting up, Cary Grant's character having to go sort of fly into almost certain death, and have Jean Arthur be, worried about him in that situation. That never materializes. Like, he does go out and fly that mission at the end, but they just sort of like, oh, and he made it or whatever. The movie just ends right there.
And to continue on your romance point, it sort of seemed like there was going to be sort of a triangle, or at least conflict between, it was Jean Arthur, right?
Yeah, Jean Arthur's the main,
Jean Arthur's character, who was his new romance, and Rita Hayworth's character, who was his old romance. And there was, like, he apparently wasn't interested in her at all anymore, and him, which you kind of assumed based on that plot structure that we've seen before, that there would be some conflict there, and there wasn't really.
Yeah, because he spends decent chunk of the beginning of the movie telling the story about this lost love and how he's still carrying the torch for her, and then she shows up and he's like, I wasn't missing anything after all.
So I'm going to tell a long, involved sports metaphor that's unnecessary, but I thought of it.
Sweet.
I thought of it, so now I want to do it. But I've been spending a fair amount of my time recently watching and reading about sports, and one of my favorite sites is Football Outsiders, which is advanced football metrics. And sort of the fundamental problem of Football Outsiders is separating play. Basically, like when they find a great quarterback season, it's usually tied to a great wide receiver season. When they find a great defensive line season, it's usually tied to a great secondary season, because everyone works in a unit to accomplish things, and sometimes it's hard to discern who's doing the most work or who's most credible for the accomplishment. And when I was watching this movie, it had a lot of things that other Howard Hawks films had. And I don't want to put it all on her, but Jean Arthur just couldn't really stay on the screen with Cary Grant. And, like, how much he overpowered her made the movie, like, things that didn't bother me in other Howard Hawks movies bothered me in this one. Like, I can't remember the name of the character or the actress, but in Rio Bravo you have a similar sort of storyline where a woman shows up, she falls in love with kind of a brusque man, and then, like, he tells her to leave, but she refuses to leave. And in that movie, it comes across as, like, her standing up to him in a way. Like, she's like, no, this is something worth pursuing, and I'm going to fight for it. And in this movie, and I assume it's not Howard Hawks' writing based off the fact that similar storylines work better in Rio Bravo and His Girl Friday, it comes off more like, she's just, like, crazy. She's just like a kind of horrible stereotype. And Hawks' movies are always, like, pretty masculine, but they never really bothered me before. And this one bothered me, both with her and kind of Rita Hayworth a little bit, where they were just a little more stereotypical than I was comfortable with. And I think... And and I just think, to bring the metaphor back around, that it was just that, if it had been more balanced between them, that the writing wouldn't have felt that way as much. But because she couldn't really, she wasn't as good as Rosalind Russell or Barbara Stanwyck to, like, sort of balance the power on the screen, that all of the things that can be interpreted badly definitely do get interpreted badly.
Yeah, I was watching this movie with Betsy, and the moment when Cary Grant is, like, a huge, just, like, super brusque with Rita Hayworth, we both looked at each other like, whoa, what is going on in this scene? Because he's just like, all right, you're fine, after he just dumps a bunch of cold water on her head and tells her to sober up.
Oh, yeah. I've forgotten about that scene. That scene was kind of weird, where she was just, like, drunk and worrying about her husband flying all the dangerous missions because he keeps dumping all the dangerous missions on him because nobody likes him.
Yeah.
That scene made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, but I honestly think that this movie would have been great if there were no women in it at all, actually. I feel like it would have been a better film.
One or the other.
Yeah.
Or if maybe they had a female pilot. I don't know, that might have been interesting. If it had been between, like, a male and female pilot, and the final flight had been the male and female pilot, flying. I don't know. And I guess, that's asking too much of the time period to have, a female pilot with kind of a checkered past, the way that they had, the character of McPherson, who's the one who has the checkered past with the kid. That's definitely the most compelling story in the movie, because he has to fly that mission with the guy that he hates, and ends up giving him his approval at the end when they encounter all the trouble in the pass. I also found out something interesting about the guy that plays Kid in the movie, Thomas Mitchell. is apparently like a really well-known character actor. I mean, the same year this came out, 1939, he was also in Stagecoach, Gone with the Wind, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So it was just like, this is like his year.
I thought I recognized him. Now that you mention it, he's like the drunk guy from...
Yeah, he's the drunk...
From everything. He's the drunk guy from everything. He's also the drunk uncle.
The guy who is drunk.
And It's a Wonderful Life. He's the one who loses the money. He's the drunk uncle who can't be trusted with the money.
I thought the interaction between the pilots was kind of colorful too. It was kind of fun, like the way that they were, always getting into fights in the bar and, always kind of going at each other and having fun with each other, and also how they all kind of gelled as this community against the guy who had seemingly sort of broken the unwritten code of the pilots, which was like the character of McPherson.
Not dying with your plane.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it was
saving your own life.
It was more that what he did was he bailed out and left his mechanic to deal with the broken plane instead of staying as the pilot and trying to, I guess,
die.
Right.
Or trying to get him out of there, really.
Let the engineer take the parachute.
Yeah.
It made me wonder how that interaction went down. Like, you can probably fix this, right? See ya.
Yeah. Or if it was similar to the one at the end of this movie where he actually lands a burning plane just to save, try.
But then not save.
Well, yeah, he didn't save him, but he certainly tried, and everybody.
So basically,
respect.
What we learned is that he should have jumped out because then he would have fully functional hands.
Right. Then you aren't maimed and can't fly for the rest of your life.
Which is kind of like I don't know. This movie had a very Garden of Eden feel to it. It was kind of like things were okay, and then women would come in, and it would become awful. That guy was like, "No, I'll land this plane in this horrible weather. I'm dead," because he wanted to go on a date with that woman, and then she's like, "It wasn't my fault, was it?" And of like, he specifically said, like, "I'm coming back so I can go on that date." And then he was like, "No, it's not your fault." Like, she was stupid for asking it too. After the movie, clearly blamed her for that guy's death.
That scene is my favorite scene, though. The one when Cary Grant is trying to talk him down.
Yeah. That was the one we watched in class, and why I knew that the amazing hat was coming before I ever saw the whole film.
But I don't know. For me, that scene is really interestingly edited and really tense for something that has almost no real special effects, or when they show the plane, it's often clearly a model, but that didn't take away from the fact that I was really nervous for the guy.
Yeah, it's really slow and weirdly calm, and it works really well. I agree, that was my favorite part of the film. And then, not related, I used the word "and," but this isn't related to what you just said. The movie is kind of like a rough draft of Rio Bravo. I've drawn that connection before, but the sort of masculine group or whatever, they're not defending from anyone, but they're still sort of working towards a common goal. And the woman who comes through town and falls in love with the hero. There are a lot of things that are similar between these two movies, but I definitely think Rio Bravo is better. A lot better.
I think it also, because I agree that Howard Hawks' movies are often very masculine, but they also often kind of play with ideas of masculinity, and I think there's some fun banter and stuff with Rio Bravo in terms of I remember there's one interaction that has to do with John Wayne being indignant about wearing a dress or something like that.
It's the part where he tells Andy Dickinson that he'll arrest her if she goes out wearing that. And she's like, oh, you... she's like, oh, you said you love me. And he's like, I said I'd arrest you. And she's like, oh, it means the same thing. Like, that's his way of expressing his love. It's just being really gruff and, like, you know, telling her he'll arrest her, yeah.
But this movie didn't have any of that, basically, compared to his other movies. And, yeah, that's definitely one of the ways that it is much weaker in my eyes.
I will say I liked the little kind of microcosm world that they set up here. Like, all the I guess the background sets and stuff like that, all of that looks really good. It looks really full, and you know, it looks like people really live in that town. It doesn't look really bare or anything. It looks, you know, like a full world happening, you know, behind the main characters. It really looks like there's, you know, hundreds of people coming into this bar, and everybody's, you know, doing what normal bar patrons do, and so the world feels kind of fleshed out behind them. Even if it's really only about the small group of people.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about that. I mean, the small group of people, though, is sort of... I mean, I think that's, like, Howard Hawks' major skill. It's, like, in all of his films, and it works well in almost all of them. Red River, Rio Bravo.
One thing I remember reading that never occurred to me until I read it, that I think Andrew Saris wrote about it, is that basically every single Howard Hawks movie, the plot revolves around people doing jobs. Like it's always like about people working, like, which is very much in contrast to the average film, where especially nowadays, like, people are living lives and they happen to have jobs, but those jobs are often completely incidental to the narrative, and often not even mentioned. But like every single Howard Hawks movie, the plot is almost entirely about these people have this job and here's how they do that job, and then the story happens around that.
Yeah, I liked that aspect of his movies. I really liked seeing people just like putting their business face on, and they're like kind of no nonsense, like, this is what we got to do to get this job done, and they're not acting in a way that's sort of like plot related. It's not like, oh, we need to do this because it relates to the plot. It's like, no, we're doing this because this is our job, and this is, you know, what we do. This is who we are. What were you going to say, Reuben?
You reminded me of Target Women, and which is making fun of the advertising for birth control. And she's like, it's like, with birth control, you could do all the fun things that you did when you weren't on your period. She's like, jogging, hanging out with your friends, working at your non-specific media job. And just like, these photo slides will look great on the magazine website. Thanks, Carol. Yeah. No, that's, I guess they, you know, sort of joke about it all the time now. But like, people just like have like jobs and apartments that don't really match each other, and you never see them at the job. Or just like, you know, you see, like, I think Friends is like the sort of example of like exactly what things are like now as far as that is. It's like, okay, like, it's even a joke that you don't know what Chandler's job is, and that like nobody knows what Chandler's job is. And, you know, you very occasionally see the characters at their job, and it's never, you know, to do a job. Like, they're not at their job because, oh, they have like a big order or something like that. And like, it's really interesting to them personally. It's like you cut to them at their job because a coworker is annoying, or they're in love with them, or like they embarrass themselves in front of a group of kids.
Yeah, or like the rest of their friends come to see them at the job so they can have a conversation.
The jobs are essentially meaningless in the post-Friends world. Or really,
George Costanza is a similar character.
The post-Cheers world.
Yeah.
Because the Cheers is just about people sitting around after their job, drinking beer.
Yeah.
And the people who are at their job at that don't act like they're at their job. Whereas, you know, you compare it to the big comedy of the 70s, which was MASH, which was just about people doing their job and like trying to get through doing their job without going crazy.
Dealing with jobs.
But that's not that surprising, because people work a lot less than they used to. It's a lot less important too.
was gonna say something like, what about something like I Love Lucy? I don't remember, like, what was Lucy's job? Because I know
she was a housewife.
She was just a housewife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Occasionally she had like weird jobs, but Ricky always didn't want her to have them.
Yeah. And you always heard about him, and his club job, but you very rarely saw him actually, like, leading his band or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's just like a sitcom thing, but yeah, I mean, the only like jobs I can think of people doing in movies now are like they're a secret agent for some government agency that no one knows about.
Action
like
jobs.
Yeah, they're all action jobs.
Someone must be stopped. No one's ever like passionately making, like a movie or something that they love, unless they're like a jerk. Like, if you're passionately making a movie, you're usually ignoring your girlfriend or boyfriend
right.
who needs your attention.
Yeah.
Or if you're in Take This Waltz, you're a rickshaw driver.
A passionate rickshaw driver. We've gotten way off topic. Does anyone have anything about Only Angels Have Wings that they want to say? I feel like this movie would have been like 90% better if Barbara Stanwyck was Jean Arthur's role. Just like that one change.
Yeah, I was going to say that her...
everything work out a lot better.
Yeah, I was going to say her character, it reminded me of that type of role. It was like in that same mold, but it just wasn't up to par on the normal. Like, she's not like as neurotic as Hepburn in Bringing a Baby, and she's not as, strong as Barbara Stanwyck in like The Lady Eve or something like that. She's in that same mold, but she's kind of just, I don't know, she's a little bit lifeless. And does she have a job? I can't remember what her job was.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
She had to go to New York or something like that. I can't remember why she had to leave, but
she was from New York. I don't know why she was. They said that she was a working person at the very beginning of the movie, but I didn't really understand what she did, because she was like, I was here for something, and someone went, oh, a working person or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Like,
Cary Grant tries to make a joke about her maybe being a chorus girl, but then I think she says that she's not, and then he says that she seems like she would be or something like that.
Yeah, and I think they were making that
no, it's
comment
with
the
two guys and the two guys and the bartender when she's talking to them, and they're asking about why she's down there, and something businessy comes up, and they're like, oh, a business girl, and I mean, it seems like she's
she's wearing a suit.
Involved. I mean, she's wearing a woman's suit throughout most of the movie. So she seems very professional in her attire.
If not personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that maybe could have given it more context if we even understood why she was in South America to begin with. Like,
yeah, that would have added a little bit to her anyway. It would have given her a little bit more depth, because I don't think she has very much depth.
She's from Brooklyn.
Yeah. Which
could have been interesting, because that meant something different than it means now. Like, Brooklyn used to be much more like super low income neighborhood, especially way back then. So
now you're.
That's where Biggie's from.
Brooklyn.
Biggie's from Brooklyn.
And Jay-Z. Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't have a lot of
that's terrible.
Big things to say about this movie, really. I mean, there wasn't a lot of stuff that made me think any deeper than like, oh, this is an interesting story about kind of an interesting world that I've never really considered. But it did remind me of a little bit, not all of the movie, but just the very beginning of Frank Capra's Lost Horizon, with the like the plains on the
I don't even know what
mountainous
that movie is.
Region and stuff like that. It's basically a movie about people who literally find Shangri-La in the mountains somewhere. I can't remember if their plane crashes or something happens where they literally find Shangri-La by accident while they're trying to fly out of. I think they're trying to fly out of China for some reason. But just the planes flying through the mountain thing reminded me of the beginning of that one.
I can't remember who said this, but I still think it's kind of accurate, which is that they said that they felt like there were two kinds of artists or geniuses in the world. One type of artist was someone who does essentially the same like they're born with like one great idea and they sort of refine it for their whole lives. Like they keep doing it over and over again. And the other type of artist is someone who does one thing and then immediately they don't want to do that thing again. Like what makes them a genius is that they were never interested in the same thing for like longer than like a short period of time. And I think this movie revealed to me, I've now watched enough Hawks to know that he falls into that first camp. Like I feel like pretty much all of his movies are sort of the same movie, that he's just doing like a remake of a Hawks movie over and over again. So anything that we could talk about in this movie, we could talk about in His Girl Friday or Rio Bravo or Monkey Business or El Dorado. But this one seems to just not, it doesn't have the elements working in full, conjunction yet.
He hadn't refined it to Rio Bravo standards, I guess.
Or Redline 7000.
I haven't seen that one.
That yet, actually.
But it's not surprising that John Carpenter loves Howard Hawks, because he's kind of the same. And Small Group's interest in masculinity kind of does the same movie over and over again.
Too bad he's busy playing video games.
Honestly, that's probably what I would do if I was John Carpenter. And like
super rich.
Like,
yeah, and I didn't have to make any movies anymore.
Yo, I made Halloween.
This is way off topic, but one of my film professors was talking about how like this local cinema does a lot of old retrospectives for grindhousey type stuff and 70s movies, and they were going to try and put together a retrospective of John Carpenter's movies with all like nicely restored prints, and they raised a bunch of money that they were going to pay him to like come and speak, and he was just like, nah, I don't want to do that.
He just couldn't be bothered. He
just wants to stay in LA. But
I guess maybe like, now that I think about it, one kind of Howard Hawks movie that doesn't maybe fit the same role is forgotten the name of it now, The Big Sleep, but it is still about somebody doing a job. Like it's all about doing a job, but that feels more, it's not about a group really, it's more about sort of one guy, even though it is again about masculinity and doing a job. I guess maybe that's more of Raymond Chandler's influence of the kind of solitary man.
Do you think Adrian Barbeau plays the video games with him?
Like they chat over like headset while playing Xbox?
I think they're... Oh, she's no longer married to him. I thought they were married.
I wonder who he plays video games with.
But now she's married to Billy Van Zandt.
I don't know who that is.
Is that one of the guys from Leonard Skinner?
I don't know. I can click again. When I go back, I'm now looking at who John Carpenter is married to. He's married to Sandy King. I don't know who Sandy King is. She's a producer, casting director. I know that there's a Townes Van Zandt. He's a country singer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only one I could think of.
Ronnie Van Zandt. That's the guy from Leonard Skinner.
He's a producer, writer. He did the Wayans Brothers TV show. Make sure to include all of this in the podcast.
Yeah. This is super relevant. Yeah.
Not only is it relevant, but it's interesting. People are going to want to know what Bill does.
Read all about John Carpenter's relationships.
If we had like a website that we publish these on, and you put like a little description on it, it's like, here, Reuben make an Adrian Barbeau joke, and then realize that it's not accurate, and then describe what makes it not accurate afterwards.
A lot of Googling in this episode, folks. A lot of Googling.
Why aren't we on How Did This Get Made with Paul Scheer and gang? Like,
I don't know.
We're clearly at their level.
It's so funny.
Can't wait to bring this to live audiences.
What are you eating there, Basil?
Some zucchini and sausage.
Oh, anyways.
All right, so
thanks for listening to our podcast.
Wait, what?
Like, why are you still listening? We've clearly jumped the shark.
What are we doing with this podcast anymore? No, it's okay if we want to have like a 30-minute episode. I mean, also we could just cut all of this out if we think of anything else to say about the film. I mean, I'm going to.
The only thing that I have to say is, like, I thought it was another thing where, like, the women just didn't work in this movie, where they introduced that other character who was still in love with that pilot who died, and then she was just, like, sort of standing there next to the woman that he wanted to go on a date with.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, the relationship was, like, really unclear, and it was, like, everyone was just sort of okay with it because women just really weren't that important in this movie.
Yeah, he was like, seemed to be in some kind of at least semi-committed relationship to this person, but then he's just like hitting on Jean Arthur the whole time.
Yeah.
Like right in front of her, pretty much.
What country are they in this?
South America.
The country of South America.
They kept calling.
They kept saying Barranca, but that's like a.
Is that a made-up name?
That's not a country. That's just a town, I'm guessing. It might even be made up.
Let's look that up.
Well, you can look it up, but if they're in the mountains, you know, they're going to be on the
maybe it's like Peru
western side of South America, so you're probably looking at Argentina or Peru.
Or Chile.
Or Chile.
They're down south.
They're probably not in Brazil if they're flying through mountains. It's fairly flat.
Yeah.
And coastal.
Argentina or something?
What happens if you look up Barranca, South America?
I like that they were delivering mail, too. Like, where's this mail going? And why does it end up in Barranca?
There's a movie called Barranca.
Yeah, it keeps coming up with that movie, but it's spelled wrong.
It was spelled like...
I'm looking it up right now on IMDb, and it's spelled C instead of a K. It's Barranca. Sorry, Barranca.
Yeah, 2 R's and a...
Oh, yeah, it is in Peru.
Apparently there are very many of them.
It's in Peru, apparently. Barranca.
There's one in Argentina also.
Oh, is there?
And one in Chile, so all our guesses were possibly accurate.
That's true. It is on that. Yeah.
It's another super useful part for our 3 podcast listeners.
It's like Springfield in the United States.
This is the problem with discussing movies that are okay. There's just not that much to discuss. It's like if they're terrible or if they're great, there's a lot to discuss. But if they're okay, you're just kind of like... I mean, one of the problems with okay films is that they don't have very much thematic depth.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say, is that like everything about this movie is very much right on the surface and very apparent. So
it's very competently made. I think they get a lot of mileage out of the, you know, what little special effects they have. Like everything's models and, you know, smoke machines, I guess, and they get a lot of mileage out of that. You know, doing a good job sort of creating the feel that they're going for, with the planes taking off or planes crashing or almost crashing. I will say I thought it was really funny that they were dropping nitroglycerin on condors. That was pretty funny, and that the condors come back at the end and sort of get their revenge by flying through the windshield of the
they should have called this movie Condor's Revenge.
This condor that one just flies through the windshield and knocks the kid out. It's like they have their revenge
and breaks his neck. That's how powerful
they were sick of having nitroglycerin dropped on them.
And like they installed that little bay door or whatever in the plane, but it didn't seem any safer to drop the nitroglycerin out than it did to fly back home with it. Like, it could explode if it's in the plane. It's like, also you could crash the plane if you're steering it with one hand while looking at the nitroglycerin and like untying it and like dumping it out, and aiming for the condors at the same time. It was just all a terrible plan. I thought that, you know, just like put a button in. You was just like press a button.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It was just like, no, you open the door and drop the whole thing out.
It was basically the equivalent of texting and driving in the 1930s. Was dropping your nitroglycerin
texting
out.
And flying. Oh man.
I was gonna say one more thing that I actually remember really liking is there's like one really beautiful shot when McPherson's like flying to that mining site to like pick up the guy who's injured, and there's like a shot of a real plane that's like flying like really close to a cliff, and like it's all in one shot. It like comes really close to landing and doesn't land and has to pull up and move around and then flies and lands, and it's all done in one take, and it's really super.
Yeah, that was a really good shot.
Awesome.
It's
especially
two
if you
planes.
think about having to, yeah,
it's
that,
the plane
especially if
that's
you
the
think
actor,
about the other
plane
plane
that
that had
is
to fly
the
beside it
filmmaker.
and land
Yeah,
with it.
that's true.
That's a, yeah,
I don't think
really
that was a
good
human
shot.
flying alongside the plane, shooting it. It was a plane following a plane with a camera.
Was that what was happening? Was it a following plane?
And both of the planes were
The chase
impressive.
Both planes.
Filmmaking plane and actor plane.
Great plane flying, guys.
Good job. You did it,
Yeah.
guys. You made it.
If this was the first movie of Howard Hawks that I had ever seen, I would definitely want to watch more of his stuff, because I would be like, yeah, competent director, just needs. I would probably think if I watched this, I would be like, competent director needs a good script.
Yeah,
Right.
But
I was going to say the writer for this was Jules Firthman, and I'm going to look up what else Jules Firthman wrote. Also wrote Rio Bravo, so never know. Also wrote the screenplay for The Big Sleep. I guess adapted The Big Sleep for the screen.
Along with William Faulkner.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Faulkner did that one too. And,
that just confirms to me that the casting is the main problem with this, since basically all the pieces are in place.
yeah.
I always wondered if Faulkner was super resentful that he had to like write the screenplays for more famous novelists who weren't as good, like Raymond Chandler and Ernest Hemingway.
I'm sure he enjoyed the page. Yeah, Jules Firthman. Oh, there were a couple of different people that wrote parts of the screenplay.
Well, since we're just sort of generally talking about Howard Hawks and when he gets masculinity right, like my either favorite or second favorite movie of his is I'm forgetting the name, Bowl of Fire, which was written by Billy Wilder, which is also about a group of men.
Yeah,
but
that's
like
true. Yeah, a group of older men, right?
In a way, like the exact opposite of Howard Hawks' normal, typical group of men. They're all intellectuals, yeah, and like don't know how to act around women. Are like terrified of beautiful women, completely lose like their personality or like coordination when Barbara Stanwyck shows up. And I feel like that shows that like he has like a better balance than this movie shows. I guess it's sort of like in his dramas, it's about serious men, and his comedies are about men who don't know how to handle situations, at least at first. They learn how to handle situations over the course of the movie. They become the men that star in his dramas at the end of the movie.
This is also this is the movie that he made in between Bringing Up Baby and His Girl Friday. So it was like right in the middle there.
He's like, this is too progressive. I need something a little more.
Instead of making movies where like men and women are equal, he makes two movies where women are the boss and they basically push around the man and he does what they want. And then in the middle, he makes a movie where the man is the boss and the woman is completely crazy and like she shoots him and he's like, oh, women, just when you love them, sometimes they're just gonna shoot you and you just have to accept that.
To
they're crazy.
be fair, the table was the one that shot him. She dropped the gun and the table shot him. She
pulled his gun out and she pointed at him. Whether or not she actually intentionally shot him, she still was like, if you go on this job, I'm going to shoot you. Like, that's
and
not
she
cool.
also just very carelessly, did she drop the gun or just slam it on the table?
She slammed it on the table.
She slams it on the table and then the table shoots him. The table's like, finally, my revenge after all these years.
This movie is actually about how tables and condors hate people. That's the secret thematic depth that we finally reached after 50 minutes of talking about only
You cannot abuse
wings.
your props, so they'll come back.
They
will come back and their revenge.
Hawks is a secret hippie who thinks that all things have chi and life force and need to be respected. And if you don't respect your tables and your condors, things aren't going to work out for you. Does anyone have any idea what was going on with that bartender? Like, they took the job or something for him? Was he in debt?
I think that's what it was. I think he was going to lose his bar. Yeah, I think Dutchie was going to lose his bar, and that's why they took that contract.
And so they all agreed to die for him.
Basically, that's it, yeah.
The idea, I think, was that they started I thought the idea was that they started the operation together, and Dutchie was running like the small, like the money side of it, and the bar and the restaurant and all that, and also was in charge of like procuring the planes and paying everybody, and that Carter was in charge. Jeff, the Cary Grant character, was in charge of contracting and everything else, and together they got this contract that was gonna, there's one point where he tells somebody that it's gonna get them like nice new planes and like a better route, and it's gonna be like lots more money, so everything will be secure instead of rickety like it has been. They just have to like make this quota by a certain time.
Yeah.
And that's why they've been pushing everyone overboard.
Yeah, that was kind of what I got from it too. Yeah. I got the impression that Dutchie sort of owned everything, because there's a point where he says, why haven't you gone to get that new plane from the dock or whatever? It's because he didn't have the money to go pick it up from wherever it was being stowed. Like apparently they had a plane in storage, but they couldn't pay to get it out or something. And that was the plane that McPherson and the kid fly at the end, where they try and push its ceiling and see if it'll fly over the mountains instead of having to fly through, flying directly at the camera.
Through a horrible rainy mountain pass.
What was the job?
What a terrible place to put a airfield. Yeah. By the way.
Yeah.
What was the job of that guy in the cabin with the donkey? He would just call up on the radio and he'd be like, "I saw them," and they'd be like, "Thanks."
He was just there, I think, to make sure that there wasn't a lot of like fog in the pass or whatever. He was like, okay, the pass is cleared up. Like that was always his thing. Like, okay, the pass is cleared up. Whoever was flying through here must have made it. I saw him go by or something.
Did the donkey have a job?
Yeah, it was.
He probably had to ride it back to town whenever.
Carried all his stuff back.
Like when the job's over. After he's lived in that
the donkey took over when he had to sleep. When Tex was asleep, the donkey would be on the radio.
I don't think anyone slept in this movie. People just told other people to sleep.
Drinking and cold water and coffee. That's all you need to stay awake.
Forever and ever and ever.
It happens in movies all the time, but it's just something that I have literally no connection to, which is a kid, lies about being able to see so that he can like keep flying. Basically putting him and a bunch of other people into like extreme danger. And like obviously this is a human behavior that happens because it's in real life and it's in all these movies, but it's something that I have literally no connection to. Like if I was driving and I couldn't see, I would literally pull over and like call someone and like never drive again.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, people are just too, it's like, that's like who they are. Like those guys, have a lot of machismo, and they kind of blindly follow their male instincts
literally.
To be like the
they're literally blindly
follow their male instincts to sort of be the best, and they don't want to be grounded. They don't want to be told that they can't do the job that they love doing anymore, just because it's something they can't control. But,
I'm not saying that I don't understand it. I'm saying that I have no connection to it whatsoever.
You're like, I would never do that.
It's the antithesis of my personality, and every time someone does that, I'm just kind of like, that's dumb. Like, you're so dumb.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm never
like sympathetic. I'm never like, oh, it would be hard to quit that job. I'm like, no, it's way easier to quit that job than it is to die. You're gonna die.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've ever faced anything similar. Maybe if it was like, you can't make movies anymore because you can't see or whatever, you might kill somebody with your movie making or something. Like, then, I don't know, I might be like, no, you can't tell me I can't make movies anymore. I don't care how many people get killed. I wildly swing my camera around or whatever. Like, your movie making's out of control. I just don't, yeah.
No, not a telephoto lens. You need a wide-angle lens for this. Oh, he knocked Jessica Biel off that cliff with his telephoto lens.
I guess if it was that kind of thing, then I don't know. I don't know what my reaction would be, honestly. I've never faced that kind of situation in my life.
One of my grandparents fell asleep and, like, drove their car off the road and, like, crashed it. They were fine, but, like, they could have been not fine at all. And they're still driving, not as often, but still do. I feel like if that happened to me, I would be like, okay, I'm too old to drive now. Like, it's the middle of the day and I fell asleep.
I was in the middle of the day. I was going to say, like, falling asleep at the wheel is not, I guess, like an age-associated thing generally. It's like a lot of people do that.
Oh, it is an age-associated thing?
Well...
And the old people do it a lot more than anybody else.
It's not exclusive to older people.
Right.
Anyone can fall asleep.
Yeah, like the middle of the day and just, like, not really any reason to be that sleepy. Just fell asleep.
So I think maybe the difference is that, like, I don't care about things like people in movies do. Like, there's nothing you could take away from me where I wouldn't just be like, okay, I'll just do something else.
You just don't. You don't.
It's like you can't fly anymore. It's like, well, can I play video games? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, video games are good enough.
In the 1930s. There weren't any video games in the 1930s. You'd have to play cards for the rest of your life.
That sounds okay.
Cards are pretty fun.
Cards, all right. Okay, games.
Can I like just go to bars and like drink and, you know, carouse with women? Do I have to be able to see to do that? No? Okay. Sounds good. Yeah.
Well, I don't have anything else to say about this movie.
I didn't have anything to say about this movie to begin with. I wanted to talk about sports.
Yeah, I'm amazed we made it this far. I was checking my thing and I was like, oh, it's only been 20 minutes and it feels like we're out of stuff already.
Well, I'm going to have to cut out like 15 minutes in the middle of us talking about whatever. But
leave it in.
We can have
the Adrian Barbobots.
Yeah. we can have a sports podcast after this because we can record our sports.
I don't think Basil has any interest in that.
I don't, but I have to go to class anyway, so you can do it without me.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick and Reuben, sports podcast.
Well,
sports casting.
That's it. Thanks for listening to Loose Canons. This is Reuben, Patrick, and Basil. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.